Hello and welcome to SHOWstudio, menswear panels. Always forget. Spring, Summer 2017. So this is actually our last menswear panel, and we're going to be discussing Valentino show in Paris, which is, I think, a really great one to wrap up our menswear discussions, because on the course of the 6-hour other talks we had, we discussed lots of stuff, hype and fashion, like the direction fashion is going, lots of abstract concepts, but I think Valentino will really give us an opportunity to talk about menswear, what sells, where menswear is going, particularly, really product-oriented approach. So I've got a great set of industry experts with me today to discuss Valentino. So could you introduce yourself, starting from you, Fenella?
I'm Fenella Hitchcock. I'm a cultural historian and I specialise in menswear.
I'm Mimma Viglezio. I'm a creative consultant and the editor of Lula magazine.
I'm Carlo Brandelli. I'm a designer and creative director.
Great. And I'm Anastasiia. I'm a freelance writer based in London and I'm chairing the panels this season. So very excited to discuss Valentino. First of all, because of the great work the creative directors of Valentino, who are Maria Grazia Curie and Pier Paolo Piccioli. Did I do it right? Great. So they basically have been creative directors of Valentino since 2008, as far as I remember, and also worked in the brand
forever.
For a very long time, basically, but more behind the scenes on the accessory lines. And they took over the brand when it was in a really difficult position and the sales were not going really well, and basically performed what is a stunning example of a reinvention of kind of the old name. So I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on their work, if you've been following it, on why do you think that, what was the aesthetics they followed and why do you think it worked?
Go, Mima.
Okay. I think one of the reasons why it's doing so well, first of all, it's extremely beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's very, I'm talking here more the women's, okay, but they have delivered some couture and also ready-to-wear shows that were stunning visually. And I think that was always what Valentino DNA was about, because Valentino Garavani, so the man, always has designed a fashion that was extremely elegant, extremely glamorous, and extremely beautiful. And what they managed to do without copying Valentino, but having grown with him, was to make that relevant. So to make the high glamour and the high luxury and the high fashion relevant, whilst maintaining the beauty. And what I think it's particularly interesting is that today fashion, what is hip and fashionable, is always a little bit on the verge of ugly, of wrong. The brand we prefer and wear and the model we prefer and wear, there's nothing, pretty is not really what works. And yet Valentino is so stunning that it does. Now, do they sell a lot of those clothes? I don't know. They sell probably more than before, but they sell a hell of a lot of bags and shoes. And that is what happened thanks to the revamp of the brand.
What do you think Valentino stood for originally? 60s, 70s, always elegance, right? It's always been elegant.
Yeah, Valentino, I think about Capri and JKO or
La Bella
Kennedy
Figura.
or yes, exactly, and also La Dolce Vita. And I think gowns and I think red, and that's a common thing to say, a banal thing to say. But Valentino was never, trendy in the sense trendy is seen today, but it was always beautiful, and that's what they've done. And he picked them out. After Alessandra Facchinetti was thanked, he said they are the ones, because he knew that they would work on his legacy since he made them in a way.
Yeah, I think they've just breathed life into it. I know one of the things I was thinking about before was just in terms of how do you make something that is so classic elegance, and especially with menswear, it's a really basic thing to say, but menswear is, I would argue, so much more restrictive in terms of what you can do. I write about menswear. I feel like menswear is yet to have its iPhone moment, this kind of
I like
defining
this.
thing that kind of revolutionised it in the same way that you have, iPhone and technology. There's so much more. It's limited. I used to design menswear. Menswear has always been my specialism, and I stopped doing it because I felt limited by it. So within those parameters, I think they've actually done quite a good job to kind of breathe something a bit more interesting into it, while still, the majority of it I can picture someone in without them having to be too bold.
I think the Apple moment with menswear happened at the time of Hedi Slimane at Dior.
You think so?
Like it or not, I think it changed a little bit the way menswear was conceived. You're looking at me severely, so I'm scared. And I
always
also
look
think
severe,
that Jonathan Anderson did another little bit of a Apple
do you
moment
agree as someone
more
who
recently.
designs?
But
do
yeah,
you agree
maybe-
about the restricted menswear?
No, of course. I mean, I met Valentino a couple of times when I was designing at Kilgar first time. He was a customer, and he used to buy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and his boyfriend, the business partner Giametti, used to buy things for him, and he used to buy things for his boyfriend, and they were always very elegant people. And as I said, my family used to wear Valentino. I understand Valentino to be a couple of things: very elegant, as Mima said, and this colour red, and this idea of this sort of perfect image. It's kind of interesting because 2008, maybe 2008. When did the new creative directors take over?
2008, you said, right?
2009.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. I
Yeah,
I
8
would have
years.
said
that
that.
long ago.
No, I would have said 2010, 11, but I'm
16
sure.
seasons.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. They've obviously made
16
it.
years.
Oh.
More seasons.
No, 8 years, 16 seasons.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. 16
Yeah,
seasons.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
There's obviously this word modernism, which is everywhere now, and keeping. I tell you what's difficult and why I like it, and I do like it, is that to make something beautiful and to make it modern is actually quite difficult, because you can do one or the other.
Couldn't agree more.
You have to keep. There's a very fine line where you need to understand what this idea of modern means and how to appeal to a very wide range of people, and also to make it very elegant. And what I like about their shows and what they do with the collection, and I'm always respectful when talking about the designers, because you have to be, is the quality of the materials. The leather's always very beautiful, so it's not just about fashion, which obviously it is now. There are fashion collections. Well, actually, do you think it's a fashion collection, or is it a luxury brand, or is it a fashion luxury?
It's a
Can
good
you have
question.
both?
It is a really
I think
good
it's a little bit
question.
in between, because I would probably wear more Valentino in the evening.
Yeah.
Not in the evening, like, I mean, you
For an
can
occasion.
do whatever. Yeah, for very dress
Dress
up
up.
thing, because I
Yeah.
think there are some gowns in the couture shows that are incredibly beautiful and incredibly modern and incredibly relevant. I think there are some little, I mean, when I go to the boutiques and look at the normal stuff, I mean, I probably wouldn't buy a pair of Valentino trousers or, those little dresses. They're okay, but the couture shows, I think they are just mind-blowing.
Because it's special.
Yeah.
The age demographic, the customers changed probably a lot in those from 2008.
It went down.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Especially for men. Well, let's talk about menswear, because it's menswear. I mean, probably in the probably mid 90s, early 90s, when I used to look at men who would wear things from Valentino, they were 50 plus, maybe even 60 plus on the men's side. Or maybe even on the women's side. With the women.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
quite old. But do we have any data on the value of their menswear? Do we know if
How
it's,
much it's
I
retailing
mean,
at, you mean, or
percentage of
Just what do they
of
say? Yeah,
turnover?
how it's split.
I mean,
Is-
don't
do
unfortunately have the data on how much menswear. I mean, I know that since 2009,
Yeah,
basically the sales quadrupled.
in men's as well.
No, I mean all
It's a
over,
group.
but
All over, yeah.
but also I think no, unfortunately don't have the data, but it's a very large percentage is accessories
Yes.
and menswear as well. And I think menswear was one of the biggest departments to grow, like one of the biggest.
Okay,
growing sides.
see,
They launched a
Interesting.
Pitti Uomo in 2012, I remember, when they
because
came to the
Valentino
show.
didn't have men at all, right? When it was him and Giametti, there was a man.
Yeah. It was tie. They did ties under license and shirts.
Yeah, but they were licenses. It's different.
Well, because today license. Actually, I don't know. What do you kids think about licenses these days?
You don't even know what it means, I guess, right?
As if when the product is produced
someone
by
else.
someone else.
You sell the name and they make whatever they like.
Designed
Well,
most
I
of the
think
time.
in relation to Valentino, they actually said that when they started working, the new creative directors, they sort of took away a lot of license
probably the
from
Premiere
people.
Group when they
because
bought.
they really wanted to control.
I think
the
that's a
vision
good
of the
thing,
brand
particularly
as a whole.
of a luxury brand. I would want and expect that.
Yes.
But we grew up with like YSL logos on cigarettes and lighters, because there was a time where that was making money, and then when the groups started becoming groups and buying the brands back, the first thing was to eliminate the licenses. But you also lose a lot of turnover at the beginning, because that's money coming in that suddenly doesn't come in. So
turnover.
it's not easy when you're quoted. You can't suddenly cut 30% of turnover. So
I think it's really.
but now it doesn't exist anymore. Really.
Sort of, it's really related, I think, to the idea of luxury and how it shifts, because they used to think that luxury, logos, status, and so on. So I mean, Valentino sort of shows that. There is a way to be successful in the luxury market, and probably not necessarily in the most kind of in-your-face way.
It's subtle, isn't it? It's
so,
really subtle.
what do you think is happening to the idea of luxury now and the luxury market, and what is the luxury of today?
I just want to add something to what you say first. Those shoes and bags are not that subtle.
I agree.
They
We
sell
just
a
don't
lot
probably
because
see them,
they come from probably one of the most coveted in beauty brand at the moment. I personally don't even like them very much, but that's personal, so it doesn't matter. But what strikes me the most is that they don't look like what the brands look like today, to me.
It's out of sync a little bit.
And I was in Milan this past weekend for men's, and they have this big store on Via Monte Napoleone, so you just walk by anyway. But I took the time to go around the corner, and there was only that in the window. Men and women, anything had those little spikes, and there was nothing of what I know about the brand in the store. So again, it's amazing, but then you don't see, unless you go to the big flagship in London or Rome.
Yeah, but when creative directors have their own, especially when I would imagine if a creative director takes over from someone's name, whoever that may be, to not have the name, to not have Valentino there anymore, they need to make their own identity, to cut their own path. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, because they want to make it very, very different. But for me, this idea of, and let's call it, for want of a better word, reductive luxury, which has come into the market over the last 6 or 7 years, which is something that I've been interested in for a long time, this idea of having luxury but not having too much. So, I mean, it's interesting because you've all seen the designs of the new Valentino stores, which was David Chipperfield, who is another client of mine. I'm not going to plug it too much. But I remember when David came in to see, I just did the store for Kilgar, and he came in, he was opening Valentino 3 months later, and he said, oh, look, it's up on the screen so everyone can see it. And he said, well, okay, we talked about this idea of reductive luxury. And I said, oh, David, what are you doing for the brand, for Valentino? And he says, well, they want to sell lots of bags, and you need to make it simple as possible so the image is very clear, so you can see the product very clearly. This is the main idea. And I remember David saying, they had $20 million to do the flagship store in America. And isn't it the Qatari family that owns Valentino now?
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's Primera.
Premier, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a fund.
Can we
Maybe you're right. They were
No, I think it has been bought.
by the Qatari. You're right.
Yeah, the Qatari has it. So to get a superstar
You're right.
architect,
It's Qatari.
to completely relaunch this idea of reductive luxury, and then the collections to go inside, it's super important. And then they've booked David to do lots of these stores, so it's obviously the environment's always been very, very powerful. It's kind of interesting. So
I think it's a powerful name, and if they go on with these two designers, they're doing fine, because at the end of the day, the people that count the money, they don't really care where the profits come from. But and I am convinced they sell a lot of couture, because you don't do 2 couture shows a year after year if it doesn't sell. And couture has had such a big revival like the top luxury that people are, the peak they can afford, the famous 1% prefer because it's for them only. So I
What do you
guess
think-
it's accessories and couture.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think the entry price is of couture from these houses on average?
I
If you
never
had to
really
guess.
bought couture, but I think it's
Maybe
I think it's in the high 2-digit.
So 20,
No,
25,000.
I think higher. I mean, Valentino for sure higher because now you can spend 20 grand for a ready to wear.
Yeah.
So it
embroidered
sounds
dress
something
at
out-
Gucci.
Yeah.
You know what I
something
mean?
out of completely.
So I don't know, but there's some pieces at Valent, and also sometimes their ready to wear shows are so at high level that you don't even see the difference very much. But I think what goes behind those clothes, the manufacturer and everything, it's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
I think it's high double digits.
So
But-
if we coming back to menswear, finally, you're
sorry.
like not meant to. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but in a way, it's interesting in relation, in relation that they make couture, but also of how much money they make off menswear. So, what do you think about like contemporary luxury market and menswear and the way it's going?
Well, I should give you full disclosure on the fact that I'm a
Yeah.
historian, so I don't often get the opportunity to look forward.
That's a good point.
I'm constantly looking back. I'm obsessed with the past, and hopefully learning from it. In general, there's an increase in sales of menswear, luxury menswear, but I'm sorry, it just bores me. It all bores me completely. I'm not excited by it, and it's not for me.
Is that the idea of luxury, Fenella, or did you?
Or
Or
menswear. I think
or menswear in general.
Menswear in general, both. I'm waiting for something really exciting to happen with men, and it's just it's like I said earlier. I'm waiting for this moment, and it's not. It's so restrictive, and I know.
What do you think it could be? What do you think it could be with menswear? And do you think men would allow that to happen?
No, and that's why I can't imagine something that's possible.
Because
I'm
there's a sort
sorry,
of,
I disagree.
yeah.
Really?
I really respect you, but I disagree
go for it,
in the
go for
sense
it.
that I think from within the industry, I think that the menswear has changed because society has changed. So I don't think it's the other way around. I don't think that men's designer have helped boys and men to become more, conscious about what they look like and to be more fashionable. Or at the same time, but anyway, what happened is that there's been a big shift in society.
that it becomes acceptable
Boys and
for
men
you to
are
take
more
that
groomed,
interest with you. Sure,
they're
sure.
more interested, and that has made fashion, like exploring new territories.
So-
and I think when what we saw a pity this season, it's the evidence of this. I think it's extraordinary what's
So,
happening.
but if we continue in that direction, how far does it go?
Well, it already
That I don't
happened,
know.
Fenella. What about Gucci with the non-gender specific? Maybe menswear
Such a good show.
roles. You like the show? Yeah. But
I really like the clothes. I just think it's.
I mean,
There's
I
something
think it's not
insincere
as
about it for
revolutionary
me.
as it could be. I think J.W.
Yeah.
Anderson in that respect goes further in terms of the sort of how gender is channeled in clothes. I think he takes it a bit further because he experiments with shapes, with sort of fits, and just channels what a man can wear. Just like
but
just
don't
jackets
forget
and
also
dresses.
about size of the brand. I mean, when you have
yeah, of course.
4 billion brands, when
Of
you
course,
have to
that's
do
the thing, yeah.
15 or 20% in men's, otherwise they cancel it.
Yeah.
You can experiment a little bit
this
less
is what
than
we-
what you can
in
do
terms
when
of-
you are
Yeah.
Craig Green. Thank God for
Yeah.
Craig Green, but it's a different animal.
yeah,
We're not comparing pair to pair
Yeah.
here, I think.
Yeah, although I completely agree with you on Gucci and of what on how meaningful is on how important it is what they do at the moment with kind of pushing it forward there.
Sorry guys, I just wanted to make a little small point about menswear. That's why I asked about couture. The entry price level for couture is maybe, let's say it's £20,000 for the sake of argument. Say £25,000.
Yeah,
And
at least.
okay, let's say it's about 100 hours work that I know from experience, depending on how much embellishment, it's just about the cutting and the time you make it. With menswear and bespoke, which is something which I've obviously done for a long time, the cost is just under £5,000 for 120 hours work. So men's bespoke in London or anywhere all over the world should really be £25,000.
Okay, are you telling me that when it's totally bespoke and made in Savile Row, the top price would be £5,000?
Just under £5,000, depending on the fabric, because there's about 100 hours work, 120 hours work.
Embroidery and lace.
No, there isn't. That's why I said, regardless of embellishment. But through the chest, you put 4,000 stitches. If someone sits there and stitches, you'll know 4,000 times. It takes a lot of time. So if you're saying, okay, women's wear couture is seen like this, and it's very prestigious, and it costs this, and it takes this amount of time. Menswear should be the same, and it's something I've been speaking about for a long time, because menswear isn't seen in this high regard in the same way as couture is, but the quality and the amount of time taken
is
very,
exactly the same. Well,
if it's not the same,
it's comparable,
quite
for
close.
sure.
It should be seen that way. And this word that's sort of disappeared from the vocabulary of fashion and all the arts, applied art. Let's remember that fashion, architecture, photography, it's an applied art. So the things look beautiful, but there's also a function at the end. You have to make something to work, as opposed to fine art, where it's just you can just make something for stimulus of intellectual debate. So I think a lot of women's wear, they've had designers could make things which were very, very beautiful that would encourage debate and people to talk about them, whereas men always had to make the thing function and work up until about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, when designers really started to experiment. So it's kind of interesting time. And when Fenella was saying earlier about you're waiting for this, was it the iPhone moment?
Yeah, I loved it.
For menswear to come through. It might be trickling through. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it to be a big bang. I'm an extreme person, so something really extreme would make me personally really excited. But it is turning slowly. But when you were talking about, look at Gucci or something like that, I mean, it doesn't seem enough. That I don't know. I think we're not here to talk about Gucci, but.
No, but fine.
No,
and
that's
we're waiting for
there's a lack of sincerity when they were, if we're talking about gender, it just felt like you've picked that up because it's a hot topic. It's something you should be doing. It's something that someone else is talking about. I want to see me who's not buying these things. I want to see something I want to see ethics in clothing. I guess that's coming from me, someone who, if I'm looking at a designer, it's about what they're bringing to it, what from them and their values and ethics.
Has there been anything historically that's taken your eye? I mean, what about what happened in menswear in the 70s when colour and pattern was very extreme?
Peacock Revolution is like one of that's late 60s, early 70s, so one of my favourite periods in menswear that it becomes,
Was that an iPhone moment? I know there was no iPhone. Was that a
Motorola? Pre-iPhone moment.
Was that a telex moment? Half the people watching that won't even know what telex is. Telex was before fax.
They don't even know.
What fax
I think
is
my
now,
first year of work, it was with telex.
Telex was pre-fax. You know what fax is, guys?
Yeah.
But you don't know what telex is.
Telex was pre-fax.
It's just after Morse.
It's after Morse code. When they were like flagging systems. But with all that colour and a lot of that pattern from the 70s, and men felt very, very liberated. I mean, obviously I was super young when I was observing it.
Were you existing in the 70s?
Yeah, just.
I'm glad.
And but colour, a visual stimulus through colour and men, and also the attitude and sexual attitude at the time, because again it was a liberating time for menswear as well as for men as well as women.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that to a point, because if you're thinking, I guess I'm thinking more about like glam rock now rather than Peacock Revolution, because it's brickies and eyeliner and glitter, isn't it? And I mean, I think it is debatable the amount that there was a shift. There was some shift, I'm not denying it. I think, particularly in academia, they really drive home that it was this wild thing, and it wasn't really. But
no, it's because you said earlier you're not watching it as closely, so it's interesting to hear your point of view from someone that's, as you said, which I thought was really good for you to say earlier, that you're looking back, so you can look at menswear back to today, as opposed to we're always looking forward. I mean, as designer, you always have to second guess. You're looking to do things 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 5 seasons in advance, which is always a little bit harder with menswear. But over the last few years, that has started to change. The lines have blurred again, but where it will go.
Yeah, but in a way, I felt, we're talking a lot about experimenting, and I know a lot of people have been on discussion on menswear this season, saying that menswear is so much more exciting than women's wear in terms of it's changing so much. But then it's kind of, I started thinking that maybe, brands like Valentino are so successful just because it gives that consumer of that level something quite, in a way, formalized and beautiful, but formalized and safe. Because other brands, what would you buy? Would you buy that like Balenciaga show we've seen like just before? Would you buy that like crazy huge jacket? Would you wear like knee-high boots with contrast? Or would you settle for something which you would invest a lot of money in, but you would...
But it's the fine line between
Is that the show now, guys?
Yeah, on that.
Just
so
started?
maybe we should do this now and then continue.
Have a look at that.
Let's have a look. Is this the actual music they're streaming? Okay. So, classical. There's your classical elegance.
Yeah, classical beauty.
And the fashion starting to come through.
Bags. We've seen 4 looks, 4 bags.
Yeah. This kind of military camouflage thing they've looked at before as well, haven't they? It's a little bit softer this time though, isn't it? It's more flower-like.
Well, this makes me think of what Anastasiia was just saying, like Valentino maybe is the good mix between fashion and relevant and cool, yet wearable and rather normal. So they are taking advantage of the hip that the brand has at this time. I think it's beautiful, but
it is beautiful.
They're not reinventing fashion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, it's as with the Gucci show the other day, there are a lot of for me, I can see a lot of youth cult references that are just distilled and they're still coming through. I mean, obviously this idea of animals and nature and flowers is something that's coming through all of these designers at the moment.
In a way, it's, what Gucci does with, with all the embroidery and patterns, and in a way it's similar, but Valentino is much more subtle.
Toned down,
just
less colourful.
A little bit more subtle.
Yeah.
I mean, the camouflage thing always seems to appear. So they obviously accept that as a classic pattern, like a stripe or a spot. You just see it as part of kind of design landscape now. I don't see many older people wearing it. Do you guys?
No, but I don't really care, if I may, because let's face it. No, what I want to say is that I can't mention names because I also have clients. But I mean, why do a show where you show 55 suits that are perfectly beautiful? And I mean, if you do a show, just give me something like Angelo Flaccavento was writing yesterday in BOF, or this morning. Give me some magic.
Just give me a show.
Otherwise, I come to the showroom, which it's important, but then it doesn't mean you create the magic and then you sell whatever it's wearable, but they can't put all people on the catwalk.
No, of course.
I mean, I know you come from a Savage Row tradition, and it's a little bit different.
Did. Well, not all, just maybe your clients.
No, but I mean,
keep
honestly,
going, Mima.
I don't know how to explain, but I agree with those that say, don't let me sit there and be bored because I can come to your showroom or to your store and see that.
Yeah, of course.
Give me some magic, give me a point of view, give me something to discuss. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have the panels, and I think this is a little bit too little of that. This is very much in tune with what I've just seen in Milan, where it was all like that, because times are not very safe, and so people need to sell. But that's not what a fashion show is for. It's made for.
And I think really the spectacle and in spectacle it could be very different. It doesn't necessarily have to be Galliana style spectacle, but it's, let's say, like Craig Green does a complete like spectacle. even though it's pretty subtle. So I think the brands which combine the two, which manage to basically combine the spectacle and the item, which is desirable on the other end, this is what works.
But then this stuff will sell well. I mean, it's very wearable. It's young and desirable. Men of 50 will buy the same trousers and make them a little bit longer on the ends. You know what I mean? You know better than me that you can. That when stuff goes then into store, it's thought. I mean, for women, the skirts are a little bit longer, and for men, maybe the hems of the trousers. I don't know that, but I mean. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, no, it's
not
quite
remember
restrained.
it forever.
No,
what I mean?
It's quite restrained. It is quite
it's
restrained.
very restrained.
Safe.
Yeah.
Maybe it means that they're selling a lot of men's.
So many looks as well.
Sorry?
Well, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting watching all of it go round.
You can almost get away with 10.
There's nothing
like distill that
There's nothing
right
not
down.
beautiful, you know. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. But I mean, when you saw a Valentino show, the women's show, that you're like, whoa! I still have images in my eyes that I want that. I want it all. I don't know. You're the man here, but will you remember this?
Anything striking about it?
No, probably not. But I don't look at it like that. I mean, I do. I've always been very. I would do these panels when I wasn't designing, because I always felt you had to be quite fair about how your criticism comes out. And I'll do the odd one in Italy or a French designer, one of these big houses, because I don't see it as I'm in direct competition with them. But I'll still be quite respectful to the amount of work that goes into these things. I mean, there was a friend of mine that's actually doing something with Gucci, Mima, and they were saying, look, they're doing, there's a shoot that they're doing. There's 65 people coming to work on a shoot for 10 models, and there are 5 art directors. So the machine behind you've got 10 models to take care of. There's 65 people turning up to do the work, and there are 5 art directors, not 1, 5. So, and you know.
Well, I know until 6 years ago, Gucci had about 100 people in their studio for the collateral. So
it's a
big machine. But I mean,
like
there's also a lot of
designers,
things that you don't know. There's shoots every day for the e-commerce. There are shoots every day for the different. I mean, they work.
Yeah, tell them. Yeah.
But of course, not everybody has those big offices.
No, but Valentino is one that does have the access.
But I mean, I'm not criticizing this because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were a boy, I would go there and buy that look that we just seen. I'm not criticizing. I'm just putting on the table the debate. You were saying I'm bored. I'm like, is it worth putting that stuff, going to having a location, having hair and makeup? Is it worth it?
All the people who drive there, all the people who sit through.
Do you think this should be more for this brand, Mima? Would you like to see more from Valentino?
Yeah.
For the show, okay. Because obviously,
Well, define more. I mean, more creativity.
Well, yes. More.
Maybe some
more
show.
Take
more of the same.
Take Miuccia's show the other day, Prada's. Okay, it was obviously Prada trying to start selling again, and it was more of a sports Prada thing, and it was nothing to reinvent. But the styling made it interesting. The way it was done made it more interesting. Then if you dissect the actual clothes, it wasn't the most creative Prada we've seen, but the whole thing, look, sorry. I mean, we're maybe a bit far, so we can't see details, but I see one color and 2 shapes.
Yeah, it's like looking at the street, like people on the
That's
street.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like being on the bus and being like, everyone looks the same. Or that, what's the book, the people of the 21st century, where you have, I can't remember the photographer now, it's like a whole page of people wearing pink tops and jeans, from the same city. It's bonkers.
To a certain extent, many of these brands, because of the size of the brands, become a little bit homogenized, so those looks are very similar. But that's been happening for a very long time, for 20 or 30 years. If you take those Italian designers, that, let's just say they specialized in brown, you could pick 3 or 4 of them, take out all the labels, and they were all very, very similar. These things don't change. Or you could talk about the Japanese designers in the 90s, in deconstruction, and it was essentially black. It was very, very similar aesthetic towards a lot of these designers. These things just come in trends and waves as they come through. I mean, it's kind of well balanced. It had a classical soundtrack. The clothes are elegant. You can see the quality's good. They're respecting what's happened before in Valentino. Maybe it's not a press show like some brands.
I didn't dislike it, and it's consistent and everything, but it cannot be compared to the amazingness of their women's show, I think.
Yeah. Again, the conversation we had earlier about the pressure, not the pressure, but the difference on how menswear design is seen versus how women's wear design is seen, and how women's shows can be very dramatic and very, very unusual, and you could almost take it anywhere. Whereas up until a few years ago, men's shows were a very kind of restricted and safe way of doing the show.
But that's why I can't wait for it to
change.
All brands mixing, like all brands that have both, because it's, first of all, to see the dynamic between the two genders. It's interesting because that's what you see in the street, because that's what you see everywhere, and I think.
Why are they doing it now, Mima? Because the brands have been forced to do this because business has changed.
And
to come together.
You cut away a big expense by
of
doing
course.
four shows instead of two. You know what I mean?
No, but it's business driven. It wasn't a conscious, because for me, collection should have always been shown men, and I don't think so. I think it has been business and cost driven.
I think Gucci can afford a men's show.
You still think they can? Oh, Gucci, yeah, sure. Maybe with a handful of designers.
It was the last one.
Yeah,
I think, and also it was not a men's show. It was a mix of everything.
Yeah, I think that's.
But because Alessandro believes in putting the war on the stage.
If they are, the same.
It's very obvious now to everyone, especially younger generations. Oh, why have designers been doing men's and women's?
Exactly.
Because it was about business and it was driven. I mean, the early
and
menswear
Craig Green
shows.
says he sells almost more to women than men. So even what we buy is.
Yeah. Same as like with Man, it's like the most like discussed designer collective is that hoodie doesn't have a gender. It's like it goes whoever buys it. And I mean, from a business perspective, it's great because you sell to both genders, you double your sales pretty much. So,
yeah.
It kind of seems an obvious thing now. Why hadn't anyone, thought about doing this? But the very simple ideas are obviously right in front of your face all the time until someone says, oh, why don't we? Then everyone thinks, oh yes, that was a good idea.
That's a good idea,
It's like the EU in those times.
Yeah, but then let's not go there.
No more.
Let's not go there. But then there are brands like yours where you have to invent women's wear.
Yeah, well,
so far.
Well, I know. Well, I'm freelance now for Kilgore, but I've always been asked for women's wear as long as I can remember. But my not excuse, but my answer when women would say to me, or maybe a Sue, is that after I'd made it for a woman, I couldn't have worn it myself. So I really wouldn't know if my correct intention was in the clothes. That's for me personally. I know there are lots of men that design women's clothes and women that design, because I wanted to really feel what I was doing, because I'd always, that's just the way it worked for me. But also, a man's idea of what menswear should be, up until again a few years ago, men weren't as forthcoming with their idea of vanity and wanting to look good. Now men are really, really open about how they dress.
Yeah.
I mean, when we first did a Prime Minister years ago, we had all these issues about what we couldn't say and what we couldn't say. Whenever you deal with when you dress a Prime Minister or a President, which there's been lots of in Kilgore's history, and lots of Savoy tailors, you have to be very careful about what you say about that person of power. Because if you can imagine, you're making something bespoke, that person of power will at some stage have to take their clothes off in front of you. And imagine a politician doing that.
Churchill in his
vulnerable moment.
in his boxer shorts.
It is a vulnerable moment for a guy. Yeah. Maybe not so much. Well, actually, it must be for a woman too. It just depends who's.
I don't know. I'm not a person of power, so if I have to take my clothes off in front of
for anyone it is. I guess for anyone it is, right?
But it's a great leveler when you're having
naked.
something made.
In front of
But I mean. I don't know. For me,
that was a heavy sigh.
No, because I'm a little bit sorry about this, because I'm expecting to be excited and I wasn't. But then I'm sure that these clothes, if I go to the showroom and look at them, they're desirable, they're beautiful, they're beautifully made. So the debate is, why showing? That's for me the question.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, because of the
And
enormous
Milan was
exposure.
all like
I mean, it's
this. It
prestige.
was one more boring than
still
the other.
prestigious, of course,
do a
have-
show.
To do a show, you can't just do a showroom because you have to be on the.
No, I know,
lists
but
and
then
stuff,
just make an effort.
yeah, I mean,
Well, for the large brands, it's all about money. I mean, I've been designing for a long time now, and money and business has always been at the core of these larger brands. You know, make no
Of
mistake,
course.
they are businessmen. It's 95% is about the business. The 5% creativity which comes in has been distilled to just these few little areas where you can express yourself, and a fashion show is one of those areas. You know, out of the 300 days that you work every day in a brand, you know, your fashion show day and the lead up is where you can be truly creative, which is why creative people do that, you know, do
Exactly.
that work.
That's when you can be truly creative.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always translate into sales, but it builds the brand. It builds the magic of the brand, and that's, I think, the objective of a show.
It's why films
Bit
become
expensive,
important.
but-
Yeah, it's why fashion, film, and SHOWstudio became important in that way, because, you know, expressing that through film and through movement. You know, I remember 10, 15 years ago, to do a fashion film was a big undertaking. You know, and technology changes now. Everyone can do it on your iPhone.
Yeah.
You know, when I first saw the first pop video, just all filmed on an iPhone, I can't remember whose it was. Was it Primal Scream? Maybe, I think it may have been. It just changed everything, and it will continue to change it. But, you know, I don't know, the menswear show format, you must have seen lots of menswear shows, Mima, going back.
Not that many, actually. I've been going to men's shows only recently because I never really...
Okay.
Well, unless when I was within a group and it was our... But I remember, you know, when it was our brand, so I was going and my bosses were like, when we were at the McQueen show, they were like, what's that? What just happened? And I was all excited. And I'm like, that's amazing. That's fashion. You know, that's what we need. And they were like, they didn't understand. That's what they wanted. So, you know, it's always the dynamic between the business and the creative and
fashion and style and men's and women's. It's still this dichotomy.
What I find interesting about that, considering it's kind of really a successful brand which sells, is that most of the things which sell well can be represented really well as a 2D image, you know, image on your screen, image in like e-commerce side. Like these days it's really important, but I don't know, I don't think this kind of
that middle look, I'm
think
sorry,
this-
it's really bothering me. It's really bothering me.
But there's a
I don't-
green
in terms of-
catsuit
in terms
that
of-
is
in
really
terms of what?
beautiful.
yeah.
It's that, I just feel like it that doesn't read well on a screen to me.
That's the
At
thing,
all.
I don't think it's kind of
And that one,
It doesn't,
the
like-
third one there, the green catsuit, I think it's really, really beautiful. I
Yeah,
wish
it-
I could
Yeah,
see
that's.
but
yeah.
it doesn't really jump at you as something, you know. Gucci, let's take the example of Gucci, when
the
this
pink,
is like
the pink trousers with the
Yeah.
blue tuxedo, navy
Sorry,
tuxedo or whatever, black tuxedo was amazing. But you know what I think you said something before. You said it's insincere what Gucci does. I think the strength of Alessandro Michele and what he's done is exactly the sincerity.
You think?
I think he's so honest, and I've been attacked for this before, but now I'm reading it everywhere, the word honest and sincere, so maybe I was right. It's not marketing. That's who he is, and I think what he's done, he has liberated fashion. So I'm thinking also about the cruise show that we saw here in London. There's something for everybody, and if you go to the stores, it's the same, like the more the merrier. Let's have fun, let's do what we want, let's dress a man in pink and a woman in whatever, you know, like granny chic. And
That's
then you go
okay,
to the
Mima,
store and there's
without the price tag.
many, it's not that I mean, hold on, there are some pieces that are not that expensive, because trousers are £650. I'm sorry, it's a lot of money. But in fashion,
Yeah.
it's honest. You know, there are trousers that are less well cut, and they're like 1,500 for some reason. But of course, then the embroidery gowns with lace and snakes in the back,
Yeah.
and they are above 3,000. But
I think it's interesting.
there is something for everybody.
Keep comparing
Let's say
that.
style-wise. Let's not enter in the debate of democracy.
Mm.
No,
No,
that's
we
a different
can.
story. But style-wise, you go and see pieces, and you can put them together the way you want. You're free. You can have your hands full of rings or not, and you're cool. And that's, for me, it's very important, and it's very sincere, because that's who he is.
For a long time, Gucci was, maybe this is the wrong word, but let's just call it conservative. Okay, and it was elegant. All right, when Tom Ford, were you there when Tom Ford was?
No, I started just after, but I know what he did.
Okay, and obviously, and he made it a little bit more alluring and more sexy, but it was still elegant. There was elegance there, and then afterwards with Frida, there was elegance there. But what Alessandro has done is he's maybe given Gucci back to the people, as you were saying.
In a way, yes.
To the
but
people
it's
of the
very
street,
elegant
if you like.
anyway.
It is, because your eyes are very sophisticated when you look at the way fashion
Look at the
evolved to
middle
that
look,
point.
like the green trousers and the blue. That's so chic.
Yeah, the colours.
I think that's so chic.
I think
But
it's also different.
I don't think Frida was chic. I think Frida was sexy more than chic.
It depends if you think chic is
Yeah, but
sexy.
also, it's subjective, For me, that's so chic.
I think the idea of sexy in Gucci works in the right way for today, basically, because it's not sort of, in your face highly sexualized, like, I don't know, short skirts and stuff. It's more like
it's been like that for a long time,
individual.
Anastasia.
What?
I feel the word sexy around Gucci. It's been around there for a long time.
Yeah, of course.
Ever since
of course,
Tom.
yeah.
Because he did at the time.
No, but is it still
was
now
an amazing
with this
job.
new
Today,
direction?
this is relevant.
Is it still sexy?
But is sexy
I don't think
that relevant
Alessandro
today?
wants sexy
It's
in
not
the
even
term.
part of the
no.
equation. Yeah.
But what I like also is that he mixed, like, there's like a evening jacket next to a pair of shorts, and it's just, he's telling me, it doesn't have to be morning, midday, evening, just do whatever, and let it throw it out.
I just think it's so telling that we're here and we're supposed to discuss that Valentino that we've just seen, and we're talking
don't
about,
know what to say anymore.
and then it's done, and we're actually, I
talking
think
about
that
Gucci now.
says more than
We're
anything
smiling
else
more.
we
Yeah.
could say.
Publicity.
Yeah.
That's what the show is. The
Yeah.
primary function
I
of that
think-
show, and it worked.
Basically, it's interesting
I
that
know.
we keep comparing those two, because in a way it's kind of similar cases in terms of the pathways of the designers, because
Absolutely.
Alexander Michele also worked at the brand for a decade, worked in accessories, became a creative director. Absolutely same thing with
Exactly the same.
yeah, so it's kind of interesting how it
And
could
they did
go.
a very quick
yeah.
turnaround
Yeah.
as much as he did, and they did well as much as he's doing now. So, but that's why I think we were a bit disappointed by that show that we saw before.
Yeah.
Because when you see this, it's like, yeah, bring it on, I want more.
I mean,
At
my
least
comments about sincerity aside, this excites me more,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a million times more.
when we
I can
come back
can
to
understand, even if it doesn't excite
Valentino.
me, I can understand why you or anyone would be excited by it.
Yeah. So could we come back to Valentino? Look at Valentino again.
They keep putting Gucci on the screen.
Yeah.
Well, we want to excite our viewers.
I mean, I think in terms of the amount of work that goes into these collections, this is 5 or 6 months work, and imagine you make one creative decision. If you're getting dressed in the day, most people get dressed just one time during the day, or maybe twice if you're getting dressed in the evening. So you're making a decision. We've all stood there in front of the mirror, does this look right? Should I wear this? Should I not wear this? And the design departments are perhaps going through that 50 or 100 times every single day. They're making thousands and thousands of aesthetic and creative decisions in order to arrive at a collection which is coherent, balances the needs of the business, and balances the needs of making some kind of impact to the media. So the balancing act is really, really difficult. And a lot of those younger designers, that don't have these means and the shows, they have to make those choices. They'll say, right, okay, we're going to make a show which is really very spectacular, or is really going to make some kind of dent, or impact. Or they say, right, okay, we'll play safe and we'll do something which is commercial, which we understand is going to sell. And that kind of dialogue that's been going on, I've been watching happen for the last 15 or 20 years. It's kind of interesting the way it's now shifted to this point where these big brands are now saying, okay, maybe one show, men and women, maybe no show, maybe just film, maybe just do a salon, maybe just do the whole thing on Instagram. In a year's time, I can see a brand just doing the whole show on Instagram.
I think someone has done it, no?
They've done it already, yeah, maybe. Just
or
not
maybe
do anything,
like,
just,
let's present men and women during couture in Paris, like Vetements is doing, which I think it's a very big statement. But I think there is some strategy behind it. It's not only marketing or oriented, but when you say there is a lot of work behind it, yes, it's true. But that's their job. That's that's what they do. So
No, but most people don't do their jobs and have tens of thousands of people
course.
pass critique or pass judgment on what the work is, especially today. I mean, the job of designers now today is, well, they'll all know because they're all doing it, and you guys as well.
Oh, it's brutal.
And it's constant interviews as well, and justifying what you're doing. It's almost like it's as harsh as being a football manager. This idea of transparency, about discussing and talking about what you're doing all the time.
Yeah, but all these people are very well remunerated for the risk of being
in the big brands,
in the public eyes.
In the big brands,
football
but maybe not
managers.
the smaller ones. These things that can be said, the criticism that are made ruins careers.
I agree.
And then you're afraid to maybe go in that direction, and you go here. And I think, in particular, as Fenello said earlier, maybe that restriction or that reserved nature towards menswear design is what's held menswear back a little bit, away from the kind of fundamental attitudes of how men wanted to be seen or how they wanted to be dressed. It's kind of this slightly more conservative area, which is broken down. It's been broken down.
But maybe this is just a niche, which needs to exist. Like Gucci is not for everyone, so for someone else there is.
So then who is this for?
The Valentino show, Fenella.
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier. The man is, I don't know whether their audience is now 35 plus, 30 plus, 25 plus.
I don't know the demographic, but it's certainly, people that are 20, they want it, but they can't afford it. So.
Yeah, so...
that says a lot as well, doesn't it?
That's luxury, isn't it?
Yeah.
You said something about being afraid of, if you are a top designer like Maria Grazia and Pierpaolo are right now, you're not afraid of your choices. They've been around, as we said, 8 years, 16 seasons, very successfully, so quadrupled the turnover. It's a choice. This is a choice, and I respect it. This is what they thought should be relevant today in this season. Let's face it, the world is doomed into horrible things. Maybe that's what they felt right now. Maybe also they were briefed by their CEO, like, we need to sell a little bit more of grey. I don't know. But they didn't do this because they were afraid of their choices. They did this because they believe that's what they need to do now.
No, I understand.
I think we're not talking a new young person who doesn't know where he stands now. We're talking two of the top respected people at the moment in the fashion industry.
Yeah, you don't think there would have been any business restrictions on what they showed?
There could be, yes, there could be. More than restriction, direction.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to place a pink hoodie with whatever obscene in the back, in the middle, they could have, and nobody would have said no.
The pink
they
hoodie
just
would really
didn't
work
feel like.
well.
Of course.
But I think it's really also interesting that you can really see you can really see difference between women's wear, couture, and menswear.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference between the two in terms of how expressive the clothes is, and
Well, this is why I talked about applied art earlier. It's kind of this phrase that's almost been forgotten about because, a lot of designers, and I've spoken about it before and been criticised myself about speaking about it, this idea of applied art, it has to have a function, it has to have this aesthetic beauty as well. And it's this phrase has kind of disappeared from the vernacular when we talk about the cultures in that way. But there's always been this hierarchy of menswear being kind of lower, seen in a lower level than all of these other design and creative disciplines. And it's always been a little bit annoying, it's always annoyed me a little bit. And I just wonder when it's going to turn. And you've come in fresh, Fenella, and you're kind of saying, well, it can surprise me, make something happen,
It's reflected everywhere as well. Research that I've done, trying to get men to even talk about their clothes. I think, you were talking earlier about social conditions impacting upon what we can do. Trying to get men to, I want to talk to you about fashion. They go, fashion. It's not fashion. It's style that men talk about if they're interested in fashion. In academia, the amount that is dedicated to menswear is just so small. It's one of the few arenas I think where women are on top and in the majority, which is quite exciting and one of the things I like about it. But it's a general cultural. I'm going to call it an issue. I think it's an issue. It bothers me that you are held in high regard if you're making this certain kind of women's wear than if you're a Savile Row tailor. Like, it's like you said, the exact same thing. Yeah, I'm getting really frustrated about it now.
Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned it. It was, it's just this. It's the hierarchy of how. Well, I suppose it's how the market sees design and designers and the type of designers, and it's how the media see design and those type of designers. And then, I mean, it's how fashion is seen. Well, what is the purpose of fashion? I mean, it is entertainment, obviously. You can't say it's not entertainment, right? Actually, how do we describe...
But menswear, in the past 4 years, 3-4 years, it's been the drive of the growth.
It's been
fashion.
growing, yeah.
So it is having a moment.
It is.
And that's the moment where I was, by the way, looking at it. There's one black model and one Asian. It's very
I
wide,
wanted to raise
show.
this.
So that's also.
And if you've got, if this is supposed to appeal to a global market, where are those people in that
it's
show?
a little
They're
bit
not
wide.
there, and this is a problem widespread.
But in a way, it's everywhere. I mean, it's just Grace Wales Bonar who, in a way, challenges
apart from
this, right?
her, but
still doesn't
but
make it right.
Men fashion has. I mean, there is a wave to ride now. Maybe it's even already too late because we're seeing a return back. You know, I've noticed this season a return back to what is safe and what is less interesting. Maybe except London, where we've seen a few examples of fantastic men's fashion, starting from Claire. I think she's fantastic. I'm so happy she won. But this is like back to the past.
Yeah. So maybe before we finish the panel, I don't know, maybe a couple of words from each of you about what what do you want to see from Valentino next season? What did you think of this one? Any sort of last word?
You want a summary, don't you?
Yeah, summary. Yeah. I think it's just a good way to finish.
Exciting. And also a little bit more diversity on the catwalk, probably. It's time to make an effort and say
there's no excuse anymore.
Today,
There is no excuse from Valentino, from anyone, for that not to be happening. And other than that, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm quite underwhelmed. It's not just because I find double denim spiritually chafing.
Triple denim sometimes.
Yeah, but I just. There's nothing snappy about it, and they can do that. I have seen them do that.
They're amazing.
Yeah, looking in other collections. So more of that, please.
So what do you think, Carla?
You want me to say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
For me, understanding, all the effort and the work that has to be done.
You're so diplomatic.
Well, I have to be. It's balanced. It's very balanced. I think they've got it right. Let's have some historical perspective. Up until 10, 15 years ago, menswear could not have looked like this at all. And we couldn't have been speaking about non-gender specific shows and having lots of flowers and ideas and references to animals on menswear. So it's taken a big step. They've taken big incremental steps, but it's not those super big steps that everyone wants to see now, those impact steps.
Yeah, hype is not everything, certainly. So thank you very
That's
much.
very good.
Before we finish, would like to say thank you to my panelists today, to all the panelists who've been on my panels, and the most importantly, to Nick Knight and to the amazing SHOWstudio team, the guys who you don't really see on camera, but who do so much work. So yeah, thank you guys.